The last of the guests had left, their laughter and conversation fading into the night like ghosts of a Thanksgiving that should have been about gratitude. Instead, it had been a spectacle, a public execution of Daniel's dignity at the hands of his own wife. But not tonight. Tonight, Daniel had finally seen Melissa for who she truly was. And she had no idea what was coming next. As she sipped her wine, scrolling through her phone with that smug little smirk, Daniel stood, pushing his chair back with slow, deliberate precision. The sound cut through the quiet, making her glance up. He met her eyes, calm. Too calm. "You think it's funny?" he asked, his voice steady. "Mocking me like that?" Melissa blinked, then let out a soft chuckle. "Oh, come on, Daniel. Don't be so sensitive. It was just a joke." He nodded, tilting his head slightly, as if considering. Then he reached into his pocket and slid his phone onto the table. The screen was still open, on the message she thought he hadn't seen. Her smirk vanished. The blood drained from her face as she read the words. "Can't wait to see you tonight." He didn't suspect a thing. Winky face. Daniel exhaled, slow and measured, before leaning down and whispering, just loud enough for her to hear. "Now, let's see who has nothing to be thankful for." Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, drop a 1 in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more gripping stories. Because sometimes, the best revenge is letting them know you were never the fool. The house smelled like tradition: roast turkey, buttered rolls, cinnamon-spiced apple pie. The warmth of the oven mixed with the rich aroma of sage stuffing, filling every corner of the house. Golden candles flickered on the dining table, casting soft shadows against the walls, while the hum of conversation and clinking of glasses wove a familiar melody. Outside, the Denver air was crisp and biting, a stark contrast to the cozy interior where family and friends had gathered. A light dusting of snow covered the driveway, melting slowly under the porch lights. Inside, laughter erupted from the living room as the younger cousins chased each other, their socks sliding across the hardwood floor. Daniel stood at the edge of the kitchen, observing rather than engaging. He wasn't one for center stage, but he liked watching people, his mother's quiet smile as she arranged the cranberry sauce, his father leaning back in his chair, talking about the Broncos' chances this season. It was familiar, predictable, comforting. But beneath the warm glow of the holiday, something felt different this year. Maybe it was the way Melissa flitted around the room, effortlessly charming everyone with her well-practiced laugh. Or maybe it was the growing distance between them, the kind that had started as a crack and had now become an unbridgeable chasm. Daniel took a slow sip of his bourbon, letting the burn settle in his chest. Thanksgiving was supposed to be about gratitude, about family. But as he watched his wife across the room, leaning a little too close to his best friend, something inside him whispered, "There's nothing to be thankful for this year." Daniel Carter, 42, the husband who has had enough. Daniel was never the loudest in the room, but he was the kind of man people noticed. Tall, broad-shouldered, built from years of hands-on work in construction. His hands, rough, calloused, made for building things, rested lightly on the kitchen counter as he watched the room unfold before him. At 42, he had built a good life, at least on paper. He had a house, a steady job managing construction projects across Denver, and a marriage that had lasted 14 years. But lately, that marriage felt more like a performance than a partnership. Daniel wasn't blind. He saw the way Melissa looked at him these days, like he was just another fixture in the house, something functional but unremarkable. He heard the way she talked to him, casual, dismissive, like she had long stopped expecting anything from him. And maybe that was the worst part. She had stopped expecting. And he had stopped trying. Melissa Carter, 39, the wife who thrives on control. Melissa was the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. At 39, she still carried herself with the effortless confidence of someone who knew she had power in any room she walked into. She worked in real estate, selling million-dollar homes to people who hung on her every word. And she had the kind of charm that made people want to listen. Her laughter was always just a little too perfect, her smile strategically placed. Melissa loved being admired. She loved attention. And if Daniel wasn't going to give it to her, she had plenty of other options. Lately, she had become more detached, more critical. The comments had started small, offhand remarks about his clothes, his job, the way he didn't push himself the way he used to. And then they grew sharper, cutting deeper. She never yelled. That wasn't Melissa's style. She belittled with precision, the way a surgeon cuts away at flesh. And the worst part? Daniel had let her. Jake Turner, 40, the ghost of who Daniel used to be. Jake had been Daniel's best friend for over 20 years. They had met in their 20s, back when Daniel was still full of fire, still chasing something bigger than a paycheck. Jake was different now. He still had the same confidence, the same drive, but it was polished, refined. A successful fitness coach, he had built a life around pushing limits, becoming the strongest version of himself. Jake and Daniel had drifted over the years. Not because of time, but because of difference. Jake had stayed hungry, stayed disciplined. Daniel had settled. And now, as Daniel watched from across the room, he saw the way Melissa leaned in when she talked to Jake, the way her smile lingered just a little too long. And Jake? He wasn't pulling away. Daniel's fingers tightened around his glass. Something was off. And tonight, he was going to find out what. Thanksgiving was meant to be about gratitude. About love. But tonight, Daniel was about to lose everything, or maybe, he was about to wake up for the first time in years. The conversation at the dinner table was lively, filled with clinking glasses and the soft hum of overlapping voices. The golden candlelight flickered against polished silverware, and the rich scent of roasted turkey lingered in the air. Daniel sat at the head of the table, his plate half-eaten, his bourbon glass resting in his palm. He wasn't listening to the chatter anymore. Not really. Across from him, Melissa was in her element, effortlessly charming, laughing a little too loudly at a joke her brother Adam had just made. She had always been good at this, controlling a room with nothing but a well-placed smile or a sharp-witted remark. Daniel had seen it before, had even admired it once. But tonight, there was a growing distance between them, something invisible but heavy. Something he couldn't shake. Then, it happened. Melissa took a slow sip of her wine, letting the stem of the glass rest between her fingers as she turned toward her friend Harriet, her voice carrying just loud enough for the whole table to hear. Nothing to be thankful for in bed, that's for sure. The words cut through the warmth of the evening like a sudden gust of icy wind. Harriet nearly choked on her drink before bursting into laughter, her manicured fingers dabbing at the corners of her mouth with a napkin. A few other guests let out hesitant chuckles, unsure of whether they should laugh or pretend they hadn't heard. And then, silence. A split second of silence that stretched just long enough for Daniel to feel the weight of it pressing against his ribs. His mother looked down at her plate, pretending to focus on cutting her turkey. His father cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. Melissa's brother Adam let out a small, forced cough and reached for his water. But Daniel? He didn't move. He didn't react. He simply set his bourbon glass down on the table with careful precision, his fingers loosening around the cool glass. His eyes met Melissa's across the table. She was smirking, her expression playful, as if waiting for him to brush it off, to laugh along like he always did. To let her have her moment. He didn't. For the first time in years, he didn't play along. His jaw tightened, but his face remained unreadable. No forced chuckle, no quick-witted comeback, no rolling of the eyes. Just silence. The kind of silence that made people nervous. Melissa's smirk faltered for just a moment, just long enough for Daniel to notice. He saw the flicker of something in her expression. Annoyance? Or was it unease? She had expected him to react the way he always did. To shrug, to play the fool. Not tonight. Across the table, Harriet nudged Melissa's arm, still laughing. Oh, come on, Cass. Give him some credit. Maybe it's just a bad season. More laughter. more eyes darting toward Daniel. His grip tightened under the table, fingers curling into a fist beneath the crisp linen. His heartbeat was steady, but inside, something was shifting, something slow and simmering. He should let it go. That's what he always did, right? Smile. Nod. Brush it off like it didn't sting. Like it wasn't the 100th time she had taken a jab at him in front of others. But this time, something in him snapped. Not in an explosive way. Not in the kind of way that ends in raised voices and slammed doors. No. This was something different. This was the quiet kind of snap. The kind that rearranges things inside of you. The kind that changes everything. He reached for his glass again, took a slow sip of bourbon, and let the warmth spread through his chest. He held Melissa's gaze as he swallowed, his smirk finally forming, not the amused, easygoing kind she was used to, but one that was colder. Sharper. He let the silence stretch between them. Let her feel it. Melissa's smirk returned, but it wasn't as effortless as before. She knew something was off. But she had no idea what was coming next. The last of the guests had left, their laughter and conversation lingering in the air like the fading scent of cinnamon and wine. The house, once alive with warmth and chatter, had settled into a heavy silence. Daniel stood at the sink, his hands moving methodically as he rinsed the dishes, the running water masking the quiet tension that had settled between him and Melissa. Across the room, she lounged on the couch, one leg draped over the other, her wine glass balanced in her hand while her other thumb lazily scrolled across her phone screen. She was smiling. Daniel stole a glance at her reflection in the kitchen window, his own expression unreadable. His mind replayed the moment from dinner, the laughter at his expense, the way she had looked at him, not with love, not even with frustration, but with entertainment, like he was nothing more than the punchline to a joke she had been telling for years. He exhaled slowly, forcing himself to focus on the dishes, the warm water running over his fingers grounding him. But the detachment inside him was growing, spreading through his chest like a slow-moving current. She hadn't even acknowledged what she had done. No apology, not even an attempt to brush it off. To her, it was just another joke, something to be forgotten as soon as the plates were cleared. But Daniel couldn't forget. He had spent years swallowing these little humiliations, convincing himself they didn't matter, that keeping the peace was more important than speaking up. But tonight had been different. Something in him had changed, though he couldn't yet put it into words. As he stacked the last plate, he wiped his hands on a towel and turned off the faucet. Melissa didn't look up. The glow from her phone screen reflected off her face, her lips still curved in that faint, amused smile. His stomach tightened. What the hell could be so funny? He leaned against the counter, watching her, waiting for her to notice him. She didn't. She just kept scrolling, a soft chuckle escaping her lips. And then, just for a second, he saw it, the message on her screen. A name. A preview of a text. Just a few words, but enough to send a chill straight down his spine. Asterisk, can't wait to see you tonight. He didn't suspect the thing. Winky face asterisk. Daniel's heart stopped. His fingers tensed against the counter. The humiliation from earlier? That had been nothing. This was something else entirely. Melissa shifted on the couch, adjusting the angle of her phone as she continued scrolling, still oblivious to the fact that Daniel had seen it. The moment stretched, the words burned into his brain, playing on an endless loop. Can't wait to see you tonight. He didn't suspect the thing. Winky face asterisk asterisk. His grip tightened against the cool granite of the kitchen counter, his knuckles whitening. A slow, steady pulse drummed in his ears, drowning out the soft ticking of the wall clock and the distant hum of the dishwasher. For a second, he thought maybe he had misread it. Maybe it was a joke, an inside remark between friends. But deep down, he already knew the truth. His wife wasn't just mocking him, asterisk asterisk, she was hiding something, asterisk asterisk, and judging by the message, whoever was on the other end of that text knew it too. His breath felt thick in his chest as he forced himself to stay still, his mind racing through the possibilities. Who was she talking to? How long had this been going on? Was this just flirting, or was it something worse? He watched her, the way she sipped her wine without a care in the world, tapping her screen with an easy, practiced motion. No hesitation. No guilt. If she had any idea that he had seen the message, she wasn't showing it. Melissa stretched, yawning, then stood up, carrying her glass toward the sink. "I'm heading up," she said casually, running a hand through her dark hair before turning toward the stairs. "You coming?" Daniel swallowed the bitterness rising in his throat. His mouth opened slightly, 1,000 words sitting on the edge of his tongue, but nothing came out. He wanted to demand answers, to rip the phone out of her hands, to force her to look him in the eye and tell him the truth. But something inside him, something colder, more calculating stopped him. He wasn't going to explode. He wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of watching him unravel. Not yet. He forced himself to exhale, keeping his expression neutral as he nodded. "Yeah. I'll be up in a bit." Melissa smiled, a completely normal, oblivious smile then disappeared up the stairs, her footsteps soft against the carpet. The moment she was gone, Daniel moved. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his pulse hammering as he reached for the phone she had carelessly left behind on the couch. His hands were steady, but his chest was tight as he tapped the screen, his stomach twisting into a cold knot of dread. The message was still there, sitting at the top of her notifications. "Unknown number, can't wait to see you tonight." He didn't suspect the thing. Winky face **. Daniel's jaw clenched. She hadn't even saved the number. That could mean anything. It could be an attempt to hide something, or it could mean this was new. He stared at the message, debating whether to unlock the phone. A simple swipe of his thumb, and the truth would be right there in front of him. But then he heard it, **, a soft creak from upstairs, **. Melissa was moving around in their bedroom. Maybe she had forgotten something. Maybe she'd come back down. His window of opportunity was closing fast. He placed the phone back exactly as it had been, stepping away just as he heard her footsteps approaching the stairs again. His breath remained steady, his expression unreadable. The rage inside him was there, simmering, but he wouldn't let it control him. Not yet. Melissa reappeared at the top of the staircase, rubbing her eyes. "Forgot to plug in my phone," she murmured sleepily. She patted down, grabbed the device without so much as a glance at him, and headed back upstairs. Daniel didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just watched her go. His wife had secrets. And now, for the first time in years, he had one too. Daniel remained frozen in place long after Melissa disappeared into their bedroom. His hands rested on the edge of the counter, fingers pressing into the cool stone as if grounding himself, keeping the rage from spilling over. His breath came slow and controlled, but inside, something ugly churned beneath the surface. The insult at dinner hadn't just been a careless joke. It had been intentional. Deliberate. She had mocked him in front of their family and friends, knowing full well what she was doing, and then, what? Walked away, smiling at a secret message from someone else? Laughing at his expense while making plans with another man? Anger pulsed through him, dark and simmering, but beneath it was something worse, something colder, a deep, hollow sadness, the kind that settled in his bones, a quiet realization that the woman he had spent 14 years building a life with had likely never respected him at all. Maybe she had at some point, when they were younger, when he still had that fire in him, when he was someone she admired. But that had faded, and now, he was nothing more than a routine to her, a piece of furniture in the house she used to love. The easy thing would be to storm upstairs, wake her up, and demand answers. To confront her now, while the text was fresh and his fury was sharp, but Daniel had spent years reacting the way she expected him to. Shrugging off her jabs. Swallowing his pride. Keeping the peace. Not tonight. He wasn't going to give her the fight she was prepared for. He wasn't going to let her flip the narrative and turn this into him being paranoid or insecure. No. This time, he was going to be smart. He needed proof. Something solid. Something undeniable. Because when the time came, when he finally laid it all out in front of her, she wasn't going to talk her way out of it, His jaw clenched as he reached for his glass and drained the last of his bourbon in one slow sip. The warmth of the alcohol did nothing to dull the icy resolve settling in his chest. He set the glass down, grabbed his phone, and sent a single message. Daniel I need a favor. He didn't need to say anything else. Jake would understand. Daniel took one last glance at the empty living room, the remnants of Thanksgiving still scattered across the table. The holiday was supposed to be about gratitude, about family. But as he headed upstairs, his mind already moving ahead, already calculating his next steps, there was only one thing he felt now. He wasn't thankful. He was done. The house was still wrapped in darkness when Daniel's eyes opened. No alarm had gone off, no sound had stirred him awake. It was something else. Something deep in his gut that wouldn't let him sleep any longer. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft, even breathing of Melissa beside him. She was sleeping soundly, completely unaware that everything had changed. That he had changed. Slipping out of bed, he moved through the familiar darkness, pulling on an old hoodie and sweatpants. His body was stiff, muscles unused to early mornings like this, but he didn't care. He needed air. He needed space. He needed to move. The Denver cold hit him the moment he stepped outside, crisp and biting against his skin, but he welcomed it. He climbed into his truck, turned the key, and let the rumble of the engine drown out the thoughts swirling in his head. He wasn't sure when the last time was that he had done this, driven somewhere just for himself. 15 minutes later, he pulled into the nearly empty parking lot of Titan Strength Gym. The neon sign buzzed faintly in the dark, a familiar sight from a past life. A life when he was still driven. Focused. Strong, The inside smelled the same, rubber mats, metal, and faint traces of sweat and disinfectant. The weight racks, the treadmills, the punching bags lining the far wall. It had been years, but nothing had changed. Except him. And then, a familiar voice. Well, damn. Daniel turned to see Jake Turner, standing near the benches, a towel slung over his shoulder. Jake looked him up and down, smirking. Didn't think I'd ever see your ass in here again. Daniel exhaled, rolling his shoulders. Yeah, well, things change. Jake's smirk faded slightly as he studied him closer. He wasn't just seeing Daniel, he was noticing, the tension in his posture, the sharp edge in his eyes, the way his jaw stayed tight, like he was holding something back. You good? Jake asked, voice lower now, more serious. Daniel glanced around, then back at his friend. Not really. Jake nodded once, as if that was all the answer he needed. Then, without another word, he tossed Daniel a pair of lifting gloves. Then let's get to work. Daniel caught them, flexing his fingers against the worn leather. He took a slow breath, feeling something inside him settle, something that had been restless for too damn long. For the first time in years, he was back. The soreness in Daniel's muscles the next morning was a reminder that something had shifted inside him. Every movement sent a dull ache through his arms and legs, but he welcomed it. Pain meant progress. It meant he was doing something instead of standing still, trapped in the same cycle of complacency. He moved through his morning routine in silence, pouring coffee, scrolling through emails, pretending things were normal. But they weren't. Melissa breezed into the kitchen, her silk robe cinched loosely around her waist, hair still damp from the shower. She moved with effortless ease, humming softly as she poured herself a cup of coffee, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Morning, she said, flashing him a quick smile. You were out early. Daniel nodded, taking a slow sip from his mug. Jim. Her brow lifted slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. Really? She laughed lightly. Wow, look at you, getting all disciplined again. The comment sat wrong in his chest, but he said nothing. He just watched as she grabbed her phone from the counter, checked something quickly, then placed it back down without a second glance. She didn't know that he knew. For now, he would keep it that way. Over the next few days, Daniel started paying closer attention. The cracks that had once seemed small and insignificant now felt like gaping holes. Melissa was out later than usual, always with an excuse. Work dinner, she'd say casually, kissing his cheek before grabbing her coat. Or, Harriet and I are doing a spa night, her voice light and airy as she disappeared out the door. But the timing never made sense. She started whispering on the phone, her tone lower, her words clipped. If he walked into the room, she would quickly end the call or pretend it was nothing, smiling like he had caught her discussing something trivial. Then there were the expenses. At first, he hadn't noticed. He had never been the type to obsessively check their accounts, trusting Melissa to handle most of the household finances. But now, something made him look. And when he did, his stomach tightened. Dinners at expensive restaurants, ones he hadn't attended. Hotel charges with vague, unfamiliar names. A few cash withdrawals that didn't align with anything he could account for. It wasn't definitive proof, but it was enough to keep him up at night. Enough to make him grip the steering wheel tighter on his drives home. Enough to make every glance, every touch, every word from her feel tainted. He started writing everything down, asterisk, dates, times, patterns, asterisk. He kept a small notepad in his truck, jotting down details when Melissa would come home late, how she smelled of a different cologne, how she always seemed too happy, too light after these so-called work outings. She thought she was being careful. She thought she was in control. But she had no idea that Daniel was watching. Daniel wasn't the type to ask for help. He had spent his whole life handling things on his own, fixing problems with his hands, keeping his emotions locked behind a wall of quiet endurance. But this, asterisk, this was different, asterisk, this wasn't something he could just push through. He needed answers. And there was only one person he trusted to help him get them. He met Jake at a diner on the outskirts of town, one of those places with cracked leather booths and the smell of burnt coffee permanently embedded in the air. Jake was already there when Daniel arrived, stirring a spoon lazily through his coffee, watching the world outside the window like he had all the time in the world. As soon as Daniel slid into the seat across from him, Jake's eyes flicked up, sharp and knowing. "All right," he said, setting the spoon down. "What's going on?" Daniel hesitated for half a second, but then the words came, steady and deliberate. "Melissa's cheating on me." Jake's expression didn't change, but there was a slow tightening in his jaw, a shift in his posture that told Daniel he had his full attention. "You sure?" Daniel exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. "I don't have hard proof. But I saw a text. Late nights. Hotel charges. The way she acts, like she's already checked out of this marriage." "Yeah. I'm sure." Jake leaned back, crossing his arms. "Damn." He let the words sit between them for a moment before shaking his head. "I never liked the way she treated you, but this. That's low." Daniel nodded, gripping his coffee mug. "I need your help." Jake didn't hesitate. "Say the word." Daniel pulled out his phone, scrolling to the notes he had been keeping. "She has a pattern. Tuesdays and Thursdays, she stays out late, says it's for work. The charges on our account usually show up those nights, restaurants, sometimes hotels. And she's always glued to her phone, stepping out to take calls she doesn't want me to hear." Jake scanned the notes, nodding slowly. "All right. First thing we do is figure out who she's meeting. If she's dumb enough to still be active on social media, we can use that too." Daniel frowned. "She doesn't post much." "She doesn't have to." Jake smirked, already pulling up her profile. "People leave breadcrumbs. Locations, tags, mutual friends. She might not post, but someone she's with might." For the next hour, they combed through her online activity, cross-referencing dates and locations with the unexplained charges. It was subtle, but patterns started to emerge: a tagged photo at a restaurant she had never mentioned, a check-in that didn't match where she said she was, a mutual friend who seemed to pop up in the background of too many places. Then they found it. Jake's face darkened as he turned the phone toward Daniel. "You're gonna want to see this." Daniel took the phone, his stomach clenching as he saw the picture. It wasn't blatant, just a group shot at a downtown bar from a few weeks ago. But there, at the edge of the frame, was Melissa. And sitting next to her, far too close, was someone Daniel never expected. His pulse pounded in his ears as he read the caption, bile rising in his throat. Jake exhaled sharply. "That's your best friend, man." Daniel's fingers curled around the phone. The betrayal cut deeper than he ever thought possible. Daniel stared at the screen, his grip tightening around Jake's phone until his knuckles turned white. His mind refused to process what he was seeing. There, in the dim lighting of the bar, sat Melissa, leaning in close to the one person Daniel never would have suspected, Ryan Parker, his best friend. His business partner. The godfather to his son, A slow, cold wave of realization crept through him, freezing his breath in his chest. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a knife in the back, twisted for good measure. Ryan, the man who had stood beside him at his wedding, the man who had been there through the highs and lows of his life, the one person he had trusted without question, was sleeping with his wife, Jake was watching him carefully, his expression unreadable. "I don't know what to say, man." Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was unraveling, rewinding through years of friendship, through moments that had once felt solid but now seemed like a carefully constructed lie. Had Ryan always been looking at Melissa that way? Had Daniel been blind, or had they been that good at hiding it? He swallowed, forcing the words out. "How long?" Jake hesitated. "I can't say for sure, but based on what we found, at least 6 months. Maybe longer." 6 months. Half a year, while Daniel had been working late shifts, pouring himself into their business, Ryan had been sneaking around with Melissa behind his back. A slow, dull ache spread through his chest, but it wasn't sadness. It was something darker: rage, betrayal, a deep, clawing sense of humiliation that settled in his bones. The dinner table insult, the dismissive glances, the whispered phone calls, it all made sense now. Melissa hadn't just stopped loving him. She had replaced him. Jake leaned forward. "What do you want to do?" Daniel's jaw tightened. There were 100 things he wanted to do, confront them, wreck Ryan's smug face, make Melissa feel the kind of pain she had so carelessly inflicted on him, but he didn't move. He didn't react. Instead, a terrifying sense of clarity settled over him. "I'm going to bury them," he said, his voice calm, controlled. "But first, I need more proof." Jake nodded slowly. "Then let's get to work." Daniel exhaled, his pulse steady now. He wasn't just going to find out the truth, he was going to make damn sure they regretted every second of it. Daniel sat in his truck outside the diner, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his fingers ached. His heart pounded, his jaw clenched, but his face remained eerily still. Years of friendship, trust, and loyalty had been shattered in an instant, reduced to nothing more than a sick joke at his expense. Ryan. Of all people. The man he had built a business with, the man who had stood next to him in the hospital when his son was born, the man who had been there for every major moment of his life, was the same man who had been sneaking around with his wife, A hollow laugh escaped him, bitter and sharp. How long had they been laughing behind his back? How many times had Ryan shaken his hand, shared a beer with him, looked him in the eye, knowing all along what he was doing? Daniel wanted to storm into Ryan's office and tear him apart. He wanted to wake Melissa up in the middle of the night, shove his phone in her face, and demand she tell him exactly when she had decided that their marriage was disposable. But he didn't. Because anger was a weapon best used wisely. Confronting them now would be emotional, messy. Melissa would play the victim, turning his rage against him, twisting the story into something it wasn't. Ryan would lie through his teeth, try to smooth things over, act like it was all some misunderstanding. They weren't going to get that chance. Daniel forced himself to breathe, his mind shifting into something colder. He wasn't going to let them control this. He wasn't going to give them the power to make excuses. He was going to outsmart them. He needed time. He needed proof that would leave no room for doubt, no space for lies, because when he finally confronted them, it wouldn't just be words. It would be war. Daniel sat in his truck long after the engine had cooled, staring out at the empty parking lot. His breathing was steady now, his mind no longer clouded by rage but sharpened into something more dangerous, focus, he wasn't going to lash out. He wasn't going to let emotion dictate his next move. No, he was going to be patient, calculated. If Ryan and Melissa thought they had won, thought they had him fooled, then they were about to learn just how wrong they were. He reached for his phone, scrolling through the notes he had been keeping, dates, times, suspicious transactions, Melissa's frequent excuses. It wasn't enough yet. He needed undeniable proof, something that would leave no room for manipulation, no chance for lies. First, he called his lawyer. He didn't file for divorce yet, but he asked the right questions, about assets, about the business, about how to protect himself before making any sudden moves, if Melissa had been planning to leave him, he wasn't going to let her blindside him. Next, he set up a meeting with a private investigator. Melissa was careful, but she wasn't perfect. Somewhere, there was a pattern. A routine. And Daniel would find it. Finally, he called Jake. "I need you to do something for me," he said, his voice calm, controlled. "Name it," Jake replied without hesitation. Daniel exhaled, his grip tightening around the phone. "We're going to catch them in the act." He could hear the smirk in Jake's voice. "Now we're talking." Daniel didn't smile. This wasn't a game. This wasn't about petty revenge. This was about taking back control. Melissa had been talking about her work trip for weeks. She had slipped it into conversation so casually, so effortlessly, that anyone listening would have believed her. "It's just a short overnight stay," she had said, flipping through her planner at the kitchen counter. "Company retreat." Boring, really. Daniel had nodded at the time, pretending to accept it, pretending to be the same oblivious husband she had grown used to deceiving, but now, as he sat in his truck across from the downtown hotel, watching the entrance like a hunter waiting for his prey, he realized something, she had no idea how much he had changed, The street was quiet, the soft glow of the hotel's marquee reflecting off the pavement. People filtered in and out of the entrance, suitcases rolling behind them, the occasional taxi pulling up to the curb. Then, at exactly 8:47 p.m., Melissa's car appeared. Daniel's grip tightened around the steering wheel as she pulled into the valet lane. She looked perfect, heels clicking against the pavement, hairstyled, her favorite black dress hugging her figure, she looked like she was going to seduce someone. Because she was. His chest burned, but he stayed still, watching as she handed her keys to the valet, smiled, and stepped inside. Then, 2 minutes later, another car pulled up. Ryan. Daniel didn't even need to see his face to know it was him. He recognized the car, the confident stride, the way he glanced around before following Melissa through the glass doors. They had done this before. They had a routine, Daniel exhaled slowly, steadying himself. The evidence was right in front of him, but this wasn't over. Not yet. He grabbed his phone, raised it, and started recording. Daniel kept his phone steady, the screen glowing as he recorded every detail, the way Melissa greeted Ryan with a secretive smile, the casual way his hand found the small of her back as they walked inside together. She didn't even look over her shoulder, didn't hesitate, didn't seem the least bit concerned that she might be caught. They were too comfortable, that meant this wasn't the first time. His pulse pounded in his ears, but his hands remained still. This wasn't about emotion anymore, it was about proof, hard, undeniable proof that would strip Melissa of every excuse, every manipulative attempt to gaslight him into thinking he was imagining things. Once they disappeared into the hotel, Daniel exhaled and opened a secure folder on his phone, uploading the video immediately. No risks. No chances, if Melissa tried to play games later, he'd already have everything stored in multiple places. But he wasn't done. Over the next few days, he pieced together the full picture. He pulled their bank statements, tracing the expensive dinners, the luxury hotel stays, the odd withdrawals that had always seemed too random to question before. Now, they all made sense. He went back through their text messages, scrolling past the mundane conversations until he found the gaps, the deleted messages, the missing pieces that painted the real story. The puzzle was coming together. And soon, Melissa and Ryan would realize just how badly they had underestimated him. Daniel walked through the front door, setting his keys on the counter like it was any other night. The house was warm, filled with the familiar scent of Melissa's vanilla candles, the soft hum of the dishwasher running in the background. Everything looked the same, but nothing was. Melissa was in the kitchen, her back to him as she poured herself a glass of wine. She turned, flashing him an easy smile. "Hey, you're home late." Daniel shrugged, forcing his expression into something neutral. "Got caught up with some things at work." She nodded, taking a slow sip, completely unaware of the weight pressing down on the space between them. "I'm exhausted," she said, stretching. "That trip took more out of me than I thought." He almost laughed. She was good. A master at deception, if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, hadn't recorded the proof, he might have believed her. But now, her words dripped with lies, and he let them pass without reaction. "Yeah," he said, leaning against the counter, his voice even. "You looked like you had a long night." If she caught the edge in his tone, she didn't show it. Instead, she reached for her phone, casually checking something before setting it aside. Probably texting Ryan. Probably laughing about how clueless she thought Daniel was. He forced a smile, walked over, and kissed her cheek. She had no idea that the storm was coming. The house was alive with holiday cheer. Christmas lights twinkled against the frosted windows, and the scent of cinnamon and pine filled the air. Laughter and conversation blended into the soft sound of a crackling fire, wrapping the evening in a false sense of warmth. Daniel moved through the crowd, shaking hands, nodding at stories he barely heard, his expression unreadable. Melissa, dressed in deep red with her usual effortless charm, floated from guest to guest, offering refills and flashing that practiced smile. To everyone in the room, she was the perfect hostess, the devoted wife. But tonight, the mask was coming off. Dinner was served, the dining table crowded with plates of roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. Daniel sat at the head of the table, watching as conversations unfolded around him. Melissa's brother Adam was telling a story about a disastrous office party. Melissa laughed, her wine glass raised. It was almost too easy to forget what she really was, but Daniel had spent weeks preparing for this moment, and there was no turning back. As dessert was being served, he cleared his throat, drawing the room's attention. "Before we wrap up the night, I put together something special," he said, his voice calm, even pleasant. "A little slideshow. A trip down memory lane." Melissa's smile didn't falter, but her posture shifted slightly. "Oh? What kind of slideshow?" Daniel reached for the remote, pressing a button. The TV on the wall flickered to life. "It's a surprise." The first few pictures were innocent, old family photos, moments from past Christmases, vacations, nostalgic smiles and warm laughter filled the room. Then, the images changed. A picture of Melissa in the hotel lobby. Melissa at dinner with Ryan, his hand resting too comfortably on her leg under the table. A bank statement flashing across the screen, charges to luxury hotels, expensive gifts, money withdrawn without explanation. Then, the final blow, a video clip. The footage Daniel had taken outside the hotel, Melissa and Ryan walking in together, her hand grazing his arm, the intimacy between them unmistakable. The room fell into a stunned silence. Melissa's wine glass slipped from her fingers, hitting the table with a dull thud, red liquid spilling across the white tablecloth like blood. Her face went pale, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching her, waiting. "What the hell is this?" Adam's voice cut through the silence, his eyes darting between the screen and his sister. Melissa's lips parted, but no words came out. Daniel turned to her, tilting his head slightly. "Go on, honey. Tell them." She shot to her feet, her chair scraping against the floor. "You set me up," she hissed, her voice shaking. Daniel's lips curled into a slow, knowing smirk. "No, Melissa. You set yourself up, I just gave everyone a front row seat." The humiliation was complete. There was no coming back from this. The air in the dining room was suffocating, thick with stunned silence. The once festive atmosphere had vanished, replaced by the slow realization of what had just unfolded. Melissa stood frozen, her face drained of color, her chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. Around the table, eyes darted between her and the screen, disbelief hanging in the air like an unspoken accusation. Then, she moved. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Please. Can we talk about this privately?" He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest, his expression unreadable. "Talk about what, Melissa?" His voice was calm, deliberate. "You weren't exactly concerned about privacy when you were sneaking around behind my back." Her eyes glistened, and she took a step toward him, shaking her head. "It's not what it looks like," she said, her voice uneven, desperate. "Please, just let me explain." A hollow laugh escaped him. "Oh, by all means." He gestured toward the stunned crowd of family and friends still gathered around the table. "Explain. I'm sure everyone would love to hear it." Melissa's lips trembled as her gaze flicked around the room, searching for someone, anyone, who might come to her defense, but no one spoke. Even Harriet, her closest friend, sat stiffly, staring down at her plate as if wishing she could disappear. Then, Melissa did what she always did when things weren't going her way. She switched tactics. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands clutching at his, her voice barely above a whisper. "I made a mistake," she pleaded, her eyes now filled with tears. "I wasn't thinking. It didn't mean anything. It was stupid, Daniel. But I love you. I love our family. Don't throw it all away over this." His fingers remained still beneath hers, cold and unmoving. "You love me?" His voice was quiet, almost thoughtful. "That's interesting. Because you sure as hell didn't look like a woman in love when you walked into that hotel with him." Melissa let out a choked sob. "It wasn't," she stopped, squeezing her eyes shut before looking up at him again, her voice growing frantic. "I'll fix this. I'll do anything. Just tell me what to do. Please, Daniel." For the first time, she was afraid. But Daniel wasn't, not anymore. He slowly pulled his hands from her grasp, standing to his full height, towering over her as she knelt there, small, broken, powerless. He looked down at her, his expression calm, detached. "You didn't just betray me," he said softly. "You humiliated me. Mocked me. Lied to me over and over again. And now that you've been exposed, now that you have no control over the situation, you suddenly want to fix it." Melissa shook her head violently. "No, Daniel, But he didn't let her finish. He took a slow step back. "I'm done." Melissa's breath hitched, her hands falling to her sides as she looked up at him, her face frozen in pure disbelief. For the first time in their marriage, Daniel had walked away first. Melissa wasn't the type to accept defeat. Daniel knew that. He had spent years watching her maneuver through life, always ensuring she had the upper hand, always controlling the narrative. So it didn't surprise him when, just days after the Christmas dinner disaster, he got a call from his lawyer. "She already filed," the attorney said over the phone, his tone edged with something between irritation and amusement. Divorce petition. She's claiming infidelity, emotional neglect, and, get this, financial mismanagement on your part. Daniel exhaled slowly, gripping his phone tighter. She filed first? She did, the lawyer confirmed. Looks like she's trying to play offense, which makes sense. She's asking for the house, alimony, and a hefty portion of your business. If she wins, you're walking away with next to nothing. A slow, bitter smile crept onto Daniel's face. She really thought she had him cornered. Melissa hadn't just betrayed him, she had been planning to replace him for a long time. She had hired a lawyer in advance, strategized, siphoned money from their joint accounts, and created a false narrative to paint herself as the victim. She hadn't just wanted out. She had wanted to ruin him. But Melissa had underestimated him. Daniel had seen this coming. The moment he had discovered the affair, he knew he couldn't react like most men would, ***, with rage, with impulsive decisions, with emotion, ***, no, he had played it smart. I already moved my assets, Daniel said flatly. His lawyer paused. You did? 2 weeks ago, Daniel confirmed. Had a forensic accountant go through everything. Melissa's been siphoning money for months. I have records of every dollar she funneled out of our accounts. The silence on the other end was brief but satisfied. That changes everything. Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring out the window at the snow-covered street. Melissa thought she had won, thought she had taken control of the situation, but she had played right into his hands. She wasn't going to take anything from him. She was the one about to lose it all. Daniel had anticipated every move Melissa would make. The moment he saw that text message, the moment he realized she was playing a long game, he started playing one of his own. Weeks before the Christmas dinner, he met with his lawyer in secret. He had gathered financial statements, account transfers, and transaction logs, methodically piecing together every shady move Melissa had made. She hadn't just siphoned money, she had done it carelessly, leaving behind a trail of digital breadcrumbs that led straight back to her, With his attorney's help, Daniel moved his personal assets into a trust under his name only, separating them from their joint accounts, the business. He restructured it, adjusting ownership stakes so Melissa had no legal claim to it. The house. Melissa thought she had control, but what she didn't know was that Daniel had already secured the mortgage under his sole name. And then there was custody. Melissa, in her arrogance, assumed Daniel wouldn't fight her for their son. But he wasn't the passive man she had spent years walking over anymore. He had kept records, every late night, every missed school event, every unexplained absence that coincided with her work trips. He had documented everything. So when Melissa smugly filed for divorce, claiming infidelity, emotional neglect, and financial recklessness on his part, Daniel sat in his lawyer's office with a calm, knowing smile. She thinks she's got me, he mused, watching his attorney skim through the evidence. The lawyer chuckled, shaking his head. She has no idea how badly she's about to lose. When Melissa received the legal response, she expected to see a man scrambling to defend himself. Instead, she found herself under siege. Her financial deception was exposed. Her affair was documented. Her claims of emotional neglect were dismantled with witness statements from family and friends who had seen how she treated Daniel over the years. And most devastating of all, her bid for alimony in the house was denied outright, Melissa sat in their former home, now legally Daniel's alone, staring at the papers with shaking hands. She had thought she would walk away victorious, leaving Daniel broken and ruined. But now, she was the one with nothing. Daniel stood in the doorway of what used to be their home, the weight of the divorce papers heavy in his hand. The house still smelled the same, vanilla candles, faint traces of her perfume, but it felt different now. It wasn't hers anymore. It wasn't theirs. It was his, Melissa sat on the couch, her posture stiff, hands clenched in her lap. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged, but she still carried that lingering arrogance, as if she believed there was still a way out of this. That she could spin the situation in her favor. Daniel stepped forward, setting the stack of legal documents on the coffee table in front of her. "It's done," he said evenly. Melissa's eyes flicked to the papers, scanning the words as her breath hitched. The reality of her situation crashed down on her all at once. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, this isn't, Daniel, please, we can fix this." He didn't respond. She flipped through the pages frantically, her fingers trembling as she read through every loss, every consequence of her choices. No alimony. No claim to the business. No home. Full custody awarded to Daniel. Tears welled in her eyes, but this wasn't just grief, it was panic she had never expected to lose. "Daniel, you don't have to do this," she pleaded, looking up at him, desperation cracking through her voice. "I made a mistake, I was stupid. I wasn't thinking." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You were thinking, Melissa. You were thinking for months. You planned this. You took money, you lied, you humiliated me. And now you're sorry? Now that you've lost?" She reached for his hand, but he stepped back, shaking his head. "I don't owe you anything," he said simply. Melissa let out a strangled sob, her hands clenching into fists. "What am I supposed to do now?" Daniel exhaled slowly, a strange sense of relief settling in his chest. For the first time in years, he didn't care what she did. "That's not my problem." With that, he turned and walked out the door, leaving her behind with nothing but regret. Daniel didn't look back. He didn't need to. The sound of Melissa's choked sobs followed him to the door, but they meant nothing now. Her regret came too late, and he was done listening. The cold night air hit him as he stepped outside, but it felt refreshing, like the final cleansing breath after a long, suffocating storm. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, catching in his hair, melting on his skin. He barely noticed. The weight that had pressed on his shoulders for years was finally gone. He walked down the driveway with slow, measured steps, his grip tightening around his keys. The house behind him, the place where he had built a life, raised a child, fought for a marriage that had never been worth saving, was no longer his burden. It was just a structure now. Bricks and walls filled with ghosts, ***. Melissa had always believed he would never leave. That no matter how much she pushed him, humiliated him, he would always stay, always forgive. She had thought she could break him down piece by piece and he would still crawl back, desperate for whatever scraps of affection she decided to offer. But she had been wrong. Daniel opened his truck door, slid inside, and started the engine. The low rumble filled the quiet street, the headlights cutting through the falling snow. He took one last breath, letting it settle deep in his chest, and then pulled out of the driveway without hesitation. No more anger. No more pain. No more pretending. For the first time in years, he was free. 6 months had passed, and Daniel barely recognized the man he used to be. The exhaustion in his eyes was gone. The weight on his shoulders had lifted, ***. The scars of betrayal were still there, but they no longer controlled him. Instead, they had become a reminder, a lesson in self-respect, in knowing when to walk away. He stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. The reflection staring back at him wasn't the broken man Melissa had once belittled. This was someone stronger. Someone who had reclaimed his life, ***. His body had changed too. Months of discipline at the gym had brought back the strength he had once lost. His shoulders were broader, his posture straighter, but more than that, his confidence had returned. His phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Jake, ***. Drinks tonight? You still owe me a rematch at darts, ***. Daniel smirked, shaking his head. Jake had been there for him through it all, ***. A real friend, not a traitor like Ryan, ***. He grabbed his jacket, stepping outside into the crisp evening air. The world felt different now, not because it had changed, but because he had. Melissa had tried to break him, to strip him of everything he had built, but in the end, she was the one left with nothing. He hadn't just survived, ***. He had thrived, ***. As he walked to his truck, he felt something he hadn't in a long time, peace, he didn't need revenge. He didn't need closure. He had already won. Melissa sat alone in a cramped, dimly lit apartment, the kind of place she never would have considered before. The walls were bare, the furniture second-hand, and the silence was suffocating. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. She had been so sure she would come out on top. She had planned everything, her escape, her future with Ryan, the divorce that should have left Daniel broken and empty-handed, but instead, she was the one who had lost it all. The house. Gone. Daniel had played her at her own game and won. The money? Wasted. The lawyer she had hired had drained her finances, only for her case to collapse the moment Daniel's evidence came to light. Her reputation? Shattered. Her family, once blindly supportive, had distanced themselves. Her brother Adam had called her selfish, disgusting, words that still echoed in her mind. Even Harriet, her closest friend, had backed away after the truth came out. And Ryan? The man she had risked everything for, he had disappeared the moment things got difficult. No calls. No messages. Nothing, Melissa gripped the edges of the cheap dining table, staring down at the stack of unpaid bills in front of her. She had never imagined she would end up like this, alone, discarded, forgotten, Her fingers hovered over her phone, Daniel's number still saved under husband. Old habits, she wanted to text him, to beg him to reconsider, to fix what she had destroyed. But she knew. He wasn't coming back. And for the first time in her life, Melissa had no one left to blame but herself. Melissa had pushed Daniel for years, chipping away at his dignity, testing the limits of his patience, always assuming he would stay. She had mocked him, lied to him, and betrayed him, believing that no matter what, he would never have the strength to leave. But she was wrong. The truth is, betrayal doesn't happen in an instant, it happens over time, in small, dismissive moments that add up until one day, the person being hurt finally sees things clearly. How many times had Daniel ignored the warning signs? How many nights had he swallowed his pride, convincing himself that things would get better, The question isn't how much pain a person can endure before they break. The real question is, how many chances would you give someone before realizing the best thing you can do is leave? Because sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's strength. A man's worth isn't measured by how much he tolerates. It isn't defined by how many times he forgives someone who doesn't deserve it. It's measured by the moment he chooses himself, the moment he stops settling for less, stops making excuses for people who take him for granted, stops accepting pain as the price of love. Daniel didn't just leave Melissa, he reclaimed his life, he chose to rebuild, to become stronger, to demand the respect he had been denied for years. And in doing so, he proved one simple, undeniable truth. The moment a man realizes his own value is the moment he becomes unstoppable. Daniel's story isn't just about betrayal, it's about redemption, strength, and knowing when to walk away. Too many people stay in situations that drain them, convincing themselves that enduring pain is the same as fighting for love. But true strength? True strength is knowing when enough is enough. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories of courage and change. Your support helps bring these messages to those who need them most. Together, we can create a world where everyone's dignity is recognized, valued, and never taken for granted.